It's that time of the year, bowl games, coaching carousel, and a whole lot more. We're going to talk about it all inside the locker room. And welcome inside the locker room with Gerhard Mathangani. I'm Chase Robinson. Great show lined up. And let's start with the SEC Championship. Alabama and Florida, a dominating performance from Alabama at the end of the game. Florida came out and scored first, but then it was all tied from there.
Yeah, no touchdown November. It ended in November. The first game in December, Florida really came out, scored that early touchdown, and did it not necessarily with trick plays or anything like that, just really did it methodically. Went down the field and drove on Alabama. But one of the things that you always kind of credit the Alabama team for is whether they're up by 20 points or down by 20 points, their offensive team and their defensive team largely play a lot of the same ways. And I think one of the things with Alabama that you have to realize and take in consideration is that their defense plays a lot like the Seattle Seahawks back in the day, like where they have a knack from not just the ball, but they want to score, and they were able to do that. They put their offense in good positions a lot of the times, and with this team, they just kind of did what they did. That first drive was really the anomaly and not the norm.
For any team that Alabama would have played in the SEC Championship, whether it be Florida, Georgia, whoever, would it have ended in such a dominating game, you think?
Pretty much. With Florida, I think you had the best chance to score some points offensively, but they were so banged up that they really didn't give it fair shake. Georgia's about the same way. I think Georgia probably would have given Alabama a better game on the back end, maybe just because of their depth, than on the front end, because what happened at the Florida game was you had a great first half, and then Alabama kind of blew it away there in the second half. I think with same situation, great defense would have made it tighter in that first half. I think Alabama would have come away in the second half. Tennessee, I think that would have been over from the very first snap of the game. I just think that Alabama, really, there's a lot of teams that are better than the teams out of the East. And what we saw out of the East this year was just a lot of average football.
Well, we'll take a look later at the college football playoff, but it was announced Alabama will take on Washington in the semifinal game. What are you seeing from that, this matchup?
This should be a really, really fun, really interesting matchup, mainly because you have a team out of the Pac-12 that didn't play a tough schedule, and then you have a team like Alabama who really blew away most of their competition this year. Now Alabama's really hurt on the back end, especially on their defense. Sean Deion Hamilton has now been confirmed that he is out with a torn ACL. You already had the injury to Eddie Jackson. Then Ronnie Harrison got a little banged up, came back into the game, he played pretty well. But Jake Browning and that Washington offense put a lot of points on Washington State in the last game of the regular season, and then did a good number to Colorado in the Pac-12 championship game. This is a matchup of, can Washington execute their passing game against that injured Alabama secondary? If they can do that, put some pressure on the Bama offense to score touchdowns, even though Bama's good at that. If Washington starts to give up defensive touchdowns, special team touchdowns, like the way Florida did, this game could be over quickly. But if they are able to, not necessarily expose, but find some holes in that Tide secondary, I think they'll put themselves in a good chance to win.
Well, let's move from the Alabama Crimson Tide to the JSU Gamecocks. Took on Youngstown State, second round of the FCS playoffs. Tough loss for the Gamecocks.
40-24 was the final score, and one of the things that really sticks out when you look at the box score is the fact that Youngstown State, 319 yards passing on 11 completions, 11 of 19, only threw 19 passes overall and 11 completions. What that tells you is the Jacksonville State defense uncharacteristically gave up a lot of big plays. All season long, they averaged about 250 yards giving up as far as on their defense. Gave up close to 500 total yards that game. Just played uncharacteristic. And we've said this about the offense for really the bulk of the season. They just haven't been what we were so used to over the last maybe 3 years, especially last year, putting up 40, 50 points on a lot of teams, even in the playoffs, did that. This offensive unit just never clicked the way that they clicked last year.
Right.
And they played a decent game against Youngstown State, but not nearly enough. And so that's what led to what ended up being a large win for Youngstown State.
Well, here's Coach John Gross now on this, looking back here on the 2016 season.
I'm not going to change the way I feel about them and they feel about each other. And, the bonds you get from this game's going to last a lifetime, and it wouldn't have mattered if we'd have won the last one or, got beat this one. That's still the same, and it didn't end the way any of us wanted it to end, for sure. We all expected to be, practicing on Monday and playing next Saturday. So, but I'm proud of the men that they are, and it's a lot of fun, getting to watch these guys grow as men and the stuff that they've done.
And a great season there for Coach John Gross and the JSU Gamecocks. Let's look ahead to Auburn now. They got the Sugar Bowl bid. They'll take on Oklahoma here in a few weeks in the Sugar Bowl.
And Auburn should really, really be thanking teams like Tennessee for losing to Vanderbilt and teams like Georgia for losing to Georgia Tech. One of the things about the Sugar Bowl is it's a good New Year's Day Bowl. And really, I like the New Year's Day Bowl because it can serve as a really good springboard into the following season. And so, by virtue of the fact they got lucky on a couple of SEC games, they end up in that second spot as far as in the rankings, in the college football playoff rankings, and so they were able to get the Sugar Bowl. This is a good matchup, really interesting matchup, because you have a team like Oklahoma who has not one but two Heisman Trophy finalists in D.D. Westbrook, the wide receiver, and the great quarterback Baker Mayfield. A tall task for this Auburn defense. But the thing about Auburn that we have seen over the last couple of weeks is they cannot move the football. Against Georgia and against Alabama, that's been their issue this year. And if they can move the football the way they did midseason when they were on that 5-game winning streak with Cameron Petway, with Sean White in the passing game, just being efficient in the passing game, and Cam Petway really being the bulldozer running back, that's the way they're able to score. If they don't have either of these two guys, this game could get ugly as well.
Well, here is Coach Gus Malzahn speaking on their Sugar Bowl bid as they will play Oklahoma.
Well, I've seen a little bit about Oklahoma. Of course, it starts with their quarterback, Baker Mayfield, one of the better quarterbacks in college football. They're extremely talented on offense with their skill guys. Defensively, very solid, too. I got a chance to watch the game against Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State's got an excellent offense. So, overall, a very good opponent.
And the Auburn Tigers, again, will take on Oklahoma, and we will be talking about more of that coming up next week. We're going to grab a timeout right now, though. When we come back, we'll talk about some high school sports. Stay with us here in the locker room. Back here inside the locker room, and we've been telling you about an event that we put on each year here at TV24. That's the Pigskin Roundup All-Star Banquet. We've been previewing that. The date has moved, so if you couldn't make it out what was Monday night, it has now been moved to Monday, January the 16th, so that gives you more time to get tickets. We would love to have you out to see a great speaker in Kevin Still.
Absolutely. Defensive coordinator for Auburn. At that point of the season, on January 16th, the Auburn Sugar Bowl game will be over with. Also, the national championship game will be over with. So he'll provide a lot of great insight on what this year's college football playoff brought, and he'll also have some great insight about recruiting coming up, because he'll also be on the recruiting trail. Should be a great night. We'll also unveil our Pigskin Roundup team of the all-star team this year. Obviously, always a lot of great candidates that come up for that. So should be a great night overall over at Word Alive. And also remember that you can check us out on our homepage at tv24.tv and on Facebook, and the events tab there that will have all the information for you to join us this week or this year in the Pigskin Roundup All-Star Banquet.
We have an event coming up Saturday. We have got 8 basketball games live here on TV24, and we would love for you to come on out to Pete Matthews Coliseum on campus of Jacksonville State, because there's going to be great matchups all day long. And so we invite you to tune in for the games and come on out. It's a great atmosphere, a lot of high school basketball, a lot of great teams you'll be seeing back at JSU for the regionals and possibly moving on to Birmingham. So come out and join us Saturday all day long. First game's at 9, last game's at 7:30. So anytime in between there, come watch the basketball with us over at Pete Matthews Coliseum. Well, sticking with high school basketball here, last Friday night, I know you got to go out to this, to Oxford High School, where Larry Davidson, the Oxford High School, named the basketball court after him. A lot of success in his 30 years or so out at Oxford.
It's really a special honor, and it was a surprise the way that they did it. Principal Heath Harmon and the crew, and our very own Mickey Shadricks was there as well, serving as the MC, and his family was there. It was a really special moment. But you talk about Coach Davidson, he's already in the Alabama High School Sports Hall of Fame, over 400 wins for his career, 6 county championships. His team has been to the regionals a bunch of times. This was a special moment for a guy who really lives and breathes Oxford. I mean, he was an assistant football coach, he was a tennis coach, a great basketball coach as a head coach. Obviously, the now the athletic director with the Yellow Jacket program. I couldn't think of a better honor for somebody who
Right.
represents that school as well as he did, and to name the court after him, I think is a fitting name for Oxford High School basketball, especially moving forward, to keep his legacy intact.
Absolutely, and you had a chance to speak with Coach Davidson, and here is Coach Larry Davidson about this honor.
It's not about me. I'm deeply honored, but it's about those guys that played on this court and also in that court in the old gym. And the biggest thing is about the people of Oxford. You talk about wins, you talk about regionals and county titles and area titles, but the biggest thing is what I saw tonight. Former players coming back here, former players that you see and the relationships you build. And, that's what high school athletics is all about, making a difference in young men's lives. And I hope I've been able to do that. They made a difference in my life.
It's funny talking to him after that, because one of the things that he does as athletic director, he always serves as the host for a lot of these events and functions, and being able to coordinate signing ceremonies and all that kind of stuff. So it's fun to see him being surprised on the back end of that,
Right.
not knowing what was going on, and then being able to have the court dedicated for him.
And such a great honor for such a great guy. I've been able to work with him some, and he's truly a great guy. So congratulations, Coach Davidson, on that honor. And another congratulations to Coach Scott Martin of Ohatchee. What a season the Ohatchee Indians had, and today he was named the Alabama Coaches Association 3A Coach of the Year.
It speaks to the kind of coaching there is in Calhoun County, because here you have Piedmont Steve Smith just across the county, just won a second state championship, an undefeated season. But it's hard to argue against Coach Scott Martin. What he's done with that program in a very short time is really unbelievable. And he one of the things that marks a great coach, and Nick Saban said this a little while ago when he was talking about Lane Kiffin, and one of the things that Lane Kiffin had done so well was work with different style quarterbacks,
Right.
Blake Sims, Jake Coker, and now Jalen Hurts, able to adapt what he does to their skill set. That's exactly what Coach Scott Martin did. He came in with a spread concept. He wanted to run the ball a lot with that spread concept, and he really found out that a different offense was better suited for his guys. And so after a couple of years, some growing pains, this team had won like 2 games like 3 years ago. A team that had fallen on hard times losing, he turned that program around and made them winners. And I think that
Right.
what this team will do from this season on will be a large credit to what he has done from a coaching philosophy standpoint. And this team and this unit, deserving of everything that they have as
Right.
far as postseason accolades, made it to the state semifinals this year, will be another contender going forward into next year. So congratulations to Coach Scott Martin, a very well-deserved honor.
And staying with high school football, I know the season's officially over. Crowned the state champions last year, Piedmont winning it, Handley winning it. Those are 2 East Alabama teams. What does that say about football from East Alabama in, not only, of course, Piedmont Ohatchee in the semifinals, Piedmont winning it, but all kinds of great football here.
Yeah, it really speaks to just how good the teams are in this area, and really East Alabama overall. And it also speaks to how good regular season football is in this area too,
Right.
because in Class 3A Region 5, you can go out to any game, and any one of those teams this year, you could have saw them in the 3rd round of the playoffs. And then obviously with Piedmont, you saw the state champion, and in Ohatchee, you saw the region runner-up, as well as the number 4 team essentially in the state of Alabama. I think that what it speaks to is a lot of great coaching, a lot of great parenting, and then obviously with schools and administration, and then of course the players. You saw it in Class 3A Region 5. You also saw it in 4A Region 5. You saw it in Oxford's region as well, climbing all the way up to number 2 in the state. Really a lot of good things to look forward to in the future in 2017, because a lot of the players and obviously a lot of the coaches will be back next year.
Well, it was a fun 2016 football season, and we're glad you joined us for all that with the Pigskin Roundup. Thank you for making us part of your Friday nights. We're going to grab another timeout. When we come back, it's the Locker Room Roundtable. Lots to talk about, so stay with us. Back here inside the locker room, we talked a little earlier about the college football playoff. Alabama and Washington will be playing, but let's take a look now at the final college football playoff committee's top 4. And, of course, the Alabama Crimson Tide hanging on in that number 1 spot. And like I mentioned, Washington coming in at number 4. But they're Clemson at 2 and Ohio State at 3, which sets up that matchup. That will be the 7 p.m. game on New Year's Eve. And, of course, Alabama and Washington will play at 3. So I believe, two really good matchups there for the semifinal games.
Yeah, lots of controversy going into this one, of course, because you had the situation with the number 5 team and the number 6 team and the number 7 team, and you start to see the committee's qualifications for this started to become a moving target. And you have Ohio State, a team that's in there. Let me say this on the front end. I think the committee got the 4 teams correct. But I do understand a beef from Penn State, because Penn State won the Big Ten championship and beat Ohio State head-to-head. So Ohio State, in my opinion, does have the better resume. They've beat more top 10 teams, but the resume's differences aren't as huge as everybody else. Now, the thing for Penn State, obviously they lost 2 games. Don't lose to Pittsburgh and you're in. It's a flawed system. It was with the BCS, and I think you could make an argument that it still is now. But like I said on the front end, I do think they got the right 4 in there. It's just hard to tell a team that won a conference championship and beat the team on the field head-to-head that's in the Final Four that they don't belong. And so that team will, and Penn State will obviously go to the Rose Bowl. I just think that it's a flawed system, and really once you lose a game, and Nick Saban always says this, once you lose a game, now you put your season and your fate into somebody else's hands. And that's exactly what the Penn State did, and the committee chose the way they chose.
Staying with college football here, a lot of talk about Lane Kiffin from Alabama moving maybe a head coach, maybe another offensive coordinator job. What is in store for Lane Kiffin here in the offseason?
Well, Nick Saban's kind of been vocal about the fact that he really wants to help Lane Kiffin get a head coaching position. He's reiterated that a couple of times, did so before the SEC Championship game, did so after the SEC Championship game as well. He also said that he thinks Lane Kiffin is ready for another head coaching job. One of the things early on that I think really hurt Lane Kiffin was he just wasn't ready for the major jobs that he got. And he was young when he got the Oakland Raiders. I mean, think about that. He's still young now, and it seems forever ago he got the Oakland Raiders job. Then he got the Tennessee job. Then he got the USC job. High-profile, marquee jobs that he was just too young to get. And I think that he came into the right program with Nick Saban. He's now ready to be a head coach. Maybe not one of those programs, but one of some of the other ones. And so one of the things that are starting to come open right now, jobs like Houston with Coach Todd Herman going to Texas, things like South Florida with Willie Taggart going across the country, going to Oregon. Those are the 2 jobs that I think. On the outside looking at, everybody keeps saying that Ed Orgeron will make a run at Lane Kiffin as the offensive coordinator. I think it's a lateral move. It's probably even a lateral, slightly downward move. And yeah, he can prove that he can turn around an offense without Alabama's talent, but I think that it's going to be either one of those head coaching positions that he'll end up going with.
If he goes with it soon, are we going to see Lane Kiffin stick with the Tide through the national championship, or will Saban pull someone else in for that job?
I think given Saban's background, and you look at a situation like Kirby Smart last year, I think Saban will try to do what's best for Alabama, and he'll convince Lane Kiffin that what's best for Alabama is essentially what's best for him, and what's best for Lane Kiffin is, by extension, what's best for the school that he ends up going to.
Right.
I think it's hard to tell coaches exactly what to do in that situation, because you're trying to hire a staff, you're trying to get recruiting, and you're spending most of your days crunching film, coming up with a game plan for not one but potentially 2 games. And so not only are they looking at potentially Washington's defense and the way that Washington likes to scheme and whatnot, but they're also having to at least keep an eye out for Clemson and Ohio State as well, because you don't want to be surprised by that. So it's a lot to do in really about 3 or 4 weeks. But I think that if anybody can do it, it's a guy that works for Nick Saban, because Nick Saban's been there before. And he talked about the time that he was with the Cleveland Browns, then he got the head coaching job in college. He stayed with the Browns through the playoffs, and the playoffs, NFL playoffs run deeper than the college football season. And so I think that Saban understands 2 ways. He understands it personally, and he understands it professionally, and I think that they'll be able to strike that balance. So I do think even if he takes the Houston job or the South Florida job as a head coach, he will stay on as a head coach and still have a seamless transition, much like Kirby Smart last year.
More on the coaching carousel here. Baylor hiring Matt Rule as their head coach to a program that's been kind of chaotic the last year or so. Is this a good hire for Baylor?
I think so. They hired Jim Grobe to kind of be a stopgap, and it really undermined him in a lot of different ways. I think that Baylor, they really miss Art Briles, because Art Briles put them on the map. And like you talked about, the chaos of that program, really now you need a head coach now that can settle everything down and say, yeah, we had top 5 aspirations. Yeah, we had playoff aspirations. That's not where we are right now. And be able to build this thing back brick by brick. And I think that Rule is a good enough guy as far as his coaching ability to do that at a program like Baylor. But Baylor's expectations cannot exceed where their reality is right now.
Right.
Where the reality is right now for them is really low.
Willie Taggart, you South Florida head coach, like you mentioned, making the move all the way across the country to Oregon. Is this a good hire for the Oregon Ducks?
I think so. I mean, he's turned 2 programs around, and he was a phenomenal quarterback, a record-setting quarterback when he actually played, and then he was an offensive assistant for Jack Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh's father at Western Kentucky. Then served with Jim Harbaugh at Stanford. So he's been with some of the bigger names in the coaching industry. He's also been a good player. And I think that, and then he's obviously done a lot with the talent that he has because down in South Florida, they went from 2-10 to 10-2. It shows that he's got what it takes to turn it around. But a lot like Baylor, Oregon can't think that they're the same Oregon of the past because the reason why is the Pac-12 North is now steep.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Washington, who's in the Pac-12 North, in the Final Four. Washington State, who's a really good football team. I think that we've now got a situation where that Oregon job is not as quote-unquote glamorous as it used to be, mainly because you have a lot of infighting within the top part of that division.
Right.
So in a lot of ways, I think that Baylor was actually a better job than the Oregon job was. But I think that if anybody can go in there and start to slowly bring back the offensive expectations, it'll be a guy like Willie Taggart.
Well, staying with college football, let's talk about some players now. One of those, Leonard Fournette. A lot of people thought coming into this season he was going to be the Heisman Trophy winner.
Right.
Not as great a season as people thought, in and out of injury. He has declared, though, he will be going to the NFL draft.
Not much of a surprise here. His junior season was filled with injuries. I think he missed 4 games overall. Still ended up rushing for 841 yards and scored 8 touchdowns. He's been physically ready probably since he was a true freshman for the NFL.
Right.
And what really helps him out is Ezekiel Elliott for the Dallas Cowboys coming in as a rookie, and he'll have a chance to win Rookie of the Year this year, him along with Dak Prescott. So it's not the same red flag as do you draft the running back in that first round, which it had been over the past couple of years with guys like Trent Richardson and Mark Ingram who didn't exceed expectations in a lot of ways. I think that Leonard Fournette will go in. As long as he doesn't go to the Cleveland Browns, I think he'll be okay. And he's physically ready, and I think it's all about him now getting used to an NFL schedule. Don't get hurt in the bowl game. Come back strong in your combine and in your pro day, and I think he'll have a high draft stock.
Moving to the Alabama Crimson Tide now, we've seen Jalen Hurts run all over the field, do wonders for Alabama this season. He came in as a true freshman. Cooper Bateman and David Cornwell, the backups, have both indicated that they will be transferring now.
Yeah, and they joined Blake Barnett, who's already transferred and now will be the next quarterback at Arizona State. This is what happens a lot of times when you recruit these 5-star players. When a true freshman, which let's just say this up front, this is the anomaly because Nick Saban typically doesn't play true freshmen at all. And he's never played a true freshman quarterback. And I think some of these quarterbacks probably got a little disheartened, and they came into Alabama thinking that they were going to be the guy, as with everybody does, with every college program. This is not any different from anybody else. But Jalen Hurts tore up the league.
Yep.
He's the Offensive Player of the Year. He's the Freshman of the Year. And I think that people started to see through the cracks that we're not going to get playing time here. So we might as well transfer, go somewhere else. Blake Barnett, now David Cornwell, and Cooper Bateman. I think there was writing on the wall for this about mid-season when not only Jalen Hurts won the position, but won and made plays at the position, and now might lead Alabama to a national championship. I think that teams and that quarterbacks, especially quarterbacks that have played for forever in their systems, so used to playing, when they don't get to play, they get a little frustrated. And I think you see that with the 3 guys that were behind Jalen Hurts. Can't say that I blame him, though. He's a true freshman. He's going to have a phenomenal career. Those guys want to play, so they'll play elsewhere.
Well, it's been Cooper Bateman. Will stay on through the end of the season, through the playoffs. Not sure about Cornwell yet, but we'll keep you updated on that. Thanks so much for joining us this week on The Locker Room. We'll be back here next week inside The Locker Room.